Is organized religion really about spiritual truth? Or has it become a tool of control, division, and manipulation? In this video, we'll explore why organized religion, despite its centuries of dominance, often makes little sense when you look beneath the surface. We're not talking about personal faith or belief in a higher power. That's something sacred. We're talking about the institutions, the hierarchy, and the dogma that claims exclusive access to divine truth while suppressing individual freedom and critical thinking. So if you've ever questioned the system but didn't know how to put it into words, stick around. This video is for you. Organized religion often presents itself as the one true path to salvation or enlightenment. Whether it's Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, or any other major system, the narrative is the same. Our way is the only way. But how can that be true when there are thousands of religions, each claiming divine authority? This illusion of exclusivity breeds division, not unity. It pits people against each other in the name of spiritual supremacy. Wars have been fought, lives destroyed, and communities shattered, all over competing beliefs. Genuine spirituality is inclusive, open, and exploratory. Organized religion, in contrast, puts God in a box and sells that box as the ultimate truth. This mindset discourages exploration and critical thinking, making people fearful of questioning what they've been taught. Real truth shouldn't fear scrutiny, yet in religious institutions, asking questions often leads to condemnation. That's not spiritual growth, that's intellectual slavery. The moment you believe your path is the only valid one, you stop growing and start judging. And that's where the nonsense begins. Let's be honest, organized religion is big business. From billion-dollar church empires to lavish temples and televangelist mansions, the financial structure behind religion often mirrors that of multinational corporations. Donations, tithes, tax exemptions, and merchandise create streams of revenue that rival those of major companies. And while some religious organizations do genuinely help communities, many exploit their followers emotionally and financially. The message is clear: give to God, but the money never leaves the organization. Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, they preached simplicity, compassion, and inner peace. Yet today's institutions focus more on maintaining their wealth and power than on living those teachings. When religious leaders fly private jets while their congregations struggle, the disconnect becomes undeniable. Prophecy becomes performance, salvation becomes a product, and God becomes a brand. True spirituality should elevate the soul, not drain your bank account. If your connection to the divine comes with a price tag or a payment plan, you're not in a temple, you're in a transaction. One of the greatest tragedies of organized religion is how it replaces spiritual discovery with rigid dogma. Instead of encouraging seekers to explore their own experiences and inner wisdom, most religions demand conformity to pre-approved beliefs. You're handed a script, not a compass. Doubt becomes sin. Curiosity becomes rebellion. Yet the very essence of spiritual growth is asking questions, big questions. Who am I? What is consciousness? Why are we here? But in most religious systems, these questions have already been answered for you, and any deviation is treated as heresy. This suppresses not just intellectual freedom, but the evolution of human consciousness. Imagine if science worked this way. If we stopped exploring after Newton, we'd never have reached Einstein. But that's what religion often does. It freezes spiritual understanding in ancient times and punishes anyone who updates the software. It teaches people what to think, not how to think. That's not enlightenment. That's indoctrination. The divine is too vast for any one doctrine. And true seekers must be free to explore it without fear of punishment or exile. Organized religion often uses fear to maintain control. Fear of hell, fear of sin, fear of divine wrath. These narratives create dependency on the institution for salvation. Instead of empowering people to find the divine within themselves, religion convinces them they are broken, fallen, or unworthy. This psychological manipulation keeps people loyal, not because they love God, but because they fear eternal punishment. That's spiritual blackmail. You're told that without the church or the scriptures, you're doomed. This fear-based approach contradicts the very essence of divine love. Would a truly benevolent creator damn you for asking questions, loving differently, or being born in the wrong culture? The use of fear turns religion into a control mechanism. And when people are controlled, they're easier to manipulate politically, economically, and socially. Real spirituality liberates, it doesn't imprison. If your relationship with the divine is based on anxiety, guilt, and shame, you're not growing closer to God, you're running from punishment. And that's not holy, that's harmful. Despite all the contradictions in organized religion, there's a powerful truth that remains. Spirituality is personal. You don't need a middleman to connect with the divine. You don't need robes, rituals, or rigid rules. The universe, God, source, whatever you call it, lives within you. This is what organized religion doesn't want you to realize, because once you discover your inner power, you no longer need an external authority to validate your experience. Meditation, mindfulness, love, compassion, service, these are paths to the divine that don't require a pulpit or a pew. When you reconnect with your inner self, you begin to see that the divine is not out there in a distant heaven. It's here. It's now. It's you. And once enough people awaken to this truth, the entire foundation of organized religion begins to shake. That's why questioning it is so dangerous and so necessary. Your spiritual journey belongs to you. Claim it, live it, and never let anyone or any institution tell you that you need them to be whole. One of the most revealing aspects of organized religion is how it has historically censored mystical and esoteric knowledge. Mystics like Meister Eckhart, the Sufi poets, Gnostics, and early Christian mystics spoke of direct union with the divine, no intermediaries needed. But the mainstream religious institutions labeled them as heretics, excommunicated them, or wiped out entire sects. Why? Because mystical knowledge threatens the authority of religious hierarchies. It teaches people they can experience God directly through inner transformation. That's spiritual independence, and independence is dangerous to a system built on obedience. Religious texts have been edited, banned, or hidden because they contain ideas that challenge institutional control. Books like the Gospel of Thomas, the Book of Enoch, and many Gnostic texts were intentionally excluded from official canons. Organized religion prefers followers, not free thinkers. The suppression of mystical wisdom is proof that the system isn't just flawed, it's intentionally limiting. Real spiritual awakening doesn't require a middleman, a priest, or a building. It begins with inner silence, deep questioning, and the courage to seek truth beyond the sanctioned narrative. When religion and nationalism mix, things get dangerous. Organized religion, when tied to national identity, becomes a political weapon. It fosters an us versus a mindset where spiritual belief is no longer about inner transformation, but about allegiance to a country or a political ideology. This blending has led to holy wars, ethnic cleansing, and systemic oppression throughout history. From the Crusades to modern-day religious extremism, the pattern is the same: manipulate people's faith to serve a political agenda. National leaders love religion because it helps them manufacture consent. Wrap a political policy in religious language, and people will defend it without question, even if it goes against the core teachings of love and compassion. True spirituality has no borders. It doesn't recognize flags or governments. It speaks to the soul, not the state. Once religion becomes a tool of nationalism, it stops being sacred and starts being strategic. That's not worship, that's warfare disguised in holy robes. Don't fall for the trap. Real spiritual evolution requires you to see beyond man-made boundaries and remember that divine truth belongs to all humanity, not just one chosen nation. Here's something organized religion doesn't want you to know. Many of its foundational stories are recycled myths. The virgin birth, the flood, the resurrection, all these elements existed in older civilizations long before modern religions adopted them. Ancient Egyptian, Babylonian, and Zoroastrian texts contain strikingly similar narratives. The story of Horus predates Jesus by over 1,000 years and shares themes like divine birth, sacrifice, and resurrection. So why is this important? Because it shows that religion isn't divine revelation, It's cultural evolution. Stories were repurposed, altered, and repackaged to resonate with local populations. And yet, organized religion presents these tales as absolute truth, discouraging historical inquiry. If you question the originality, you're accused of blasphemy. But real seekers ask, if the stories are symbolic, what do they really mean? And if they're not original, why are they presented as exclusive? The answer lies in control. Symbols are powerful, but when taken literally, they become prisons of thought. Understanding the symbolic roots of religious stories frees your mind and deepens your connection to universal truth. Myths can be beautiful, but let's stop confusing them with monopolies over reality. One of the biggest illusions in organized religion is the belief that certain people, priests, imams, gurus, are inherently closer to God than the average person. This artificial divide creates a hierarchy where the spiritual elite claims special access to the divine. But here's the truth: no one has a monopoly on the sacred. This divide is institutional, not spiritual. It exists to keep the masses dependent and disempowered. When you're told that only a priest can absolve your sins, or only a guru can grant you enlightenment, you become spiritually dependent. That's the system's design. It builds authority into the person, not the practice. But the divine doesn't operate on titles. It responds to sincerity, love, presence, and awareness. The true spiritual teacher points you back to yourself, not to an institution. They don't demand worship, they inspire awakening. Once you realize that divinity lives equally in all beings, the entire structure of clergy-centered religion begins to crumble. You are not a second-class spiritual citizen. You are the temple, and no one stands between you and the infinite. Organized religion often claims to be the foundation of morality. Without it, we'd descend into chaos, so they say. But look closer, and you'll find that people are perfectly capable of being moral, ethical, and compassionate without religious doctrine. In fact, some of the most peaceful societies today are also among the least religious. Morality doesn't come from ancient texts. It comes from empathy, community, and human experience. Religion often moralizes outdated practices that have no place in modern society, while ignoring evolving ethical issues like environmental stewardship, digital ethics, or systemic injustice. Worse, it can excuse horrific acts under the guise of divine will. Think of the Inquisition, slavery endorsed by religious texts, or the abuse scandals swept under the rug. Real morality is flexible, growing with our understanding of one another and the world we live in. You don't need to fear hell to be kind, and you don't need a commandment to know that love is sacred. Religion doesn't have a patent on morality. It's time to stop outsourcing our conscience to a system and start trusting our inner sense of right and wrong. One of the most damaging aspects of organized religion is the guilt it implants deep into people's minds. You're told you're born sinful. You're told your desires are shameful. You're made to feel guilty for simply being human. This conditioning begins in childhood and can last a lifetime. Guilt becomes a mental prison, and religion holds the key. But here's the truth: guilt doesn't lead to growth. It leads to fear, anxiety, and emotional repression. When you live under constant guilt, you're not free to explore your spiritual path. You're stuck in self-condemnation. The most sacred experiences in life, sexuality, creativity, pleasure, are often labeled as sinful, turning joy into something dirty. This emotional manipulation keeps you dependent on religious structures for forgiveness and salvation. But you don't need forgiveness for being yourself. You need liberation from the lie that you were ever broken. Real healing begins when you stop outsourcing your self-worth to an institution. You are not guilty by default. You are powerful by design. Don't let guilt keep you small. Set yourself free and reclaim your wholeness. Organized religion has long suppressed the power and divinity of women. In many traditions, women are denied leadership roles, silenced in sacred spaces, and portrayed as the origin of sin. Think about how Eve is blamed for the fall of humanity in Christianity. Or how, in some religious systems, women are still denied education, choice, or autonomy. This isn't divine, it's deeply political. Ancient societies often worshipped goddesses, honored feminine energy, and celebrated the sacred balance between masculine and feminine. But as patriarchal systems rose, so did male-dominated religions. They rewrote spiritual history to center men and diminish women. The divine feminine was buried beneath layers of dogma and doctrine. Even the idea of God as he reflects this bias. Yet the feminine principle, intuition, nurturing, creativity, is essential to spiritual wholeness. True divinity includes both masculine and feminine energy. When one is suppressed, humanity is out of balance. It's time to reclaim the sacred feminine, not as a rival to masculinity, but as its equal and necessary counterpart. Women are not spiritual inferiors. They are spiritual powerhouses who've been systematically silenced. That silence must end. Religious trauma isn't talked about enough, but it affects millions. Growing up in rigid religious environments can leave deep emotional scars. People suffer from anxiety, low self-worth, fear of punishment, and even PTSD from teachings that frame God as wrathful and the world as a test. Being told that your natural thoughts are sinful, that questioning is rebellion, and that non-believers are doomed, these beliefs don't uplift, they damage. Many people carry wounds into adulthood, struggling to trust themselves, love freely, or explore new ideas without guilt. And when they try to leave the religion that harmed them, they often face rejection from their communities or families. That's spiritual abuse. Real love never isolates. True truth never harms. Healing from religious trauma takes time, courage, and often therapy. It begins with recognizing that the problem wasn't you, it was the system that tried to make you small. If religion made you feel afraid, ashamed, or unworthy, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. You're waking up. Healing is your birthright, and your soul was never meant to live in fear. Organized religion often dismisses personal spiritual experiences in favor of institutional doctrine. You may feel divine presence in meditation, through nature, in dreams, or during moments of deep connection, but if it doesn't match their script, it's labeled false or even demonic. This is spiritual gatekeeping. The truth is, your inner experience is sacred. It's how the divine speaks to you personally. Mystics throughout time have described visions, revelations, and moments of union that defied religious norms, and they were often punished for it. But they knew something vital, that truth doesn't come from outside, it rises within. Institutions want you to believe that divine experience must be mediated through rituals, clergy, or scripture. But God, Source, the universe, whatever name you use, is not limited by human systems. If you felt something real in silence, in music, in solitude, trust it. That moment of connection is valid. That insight is yours. You don't need permission to awaken. Organized religion fears inner experience because it empowers the individual. But once you tap into your own connection with the divine, no system can control you again. That's true liberation. Organized religion often claims to bring people together, but history shows a different story. Religions have divided families, tribes, nations, and even entire civilizations. Wars have been fought in the name of God. Blood has been shed over doctrines, prophets, and rituals. And even today, countless people are judged or excluded simply because they belong to the wrong faith. This division is baked into the structure of organized religion. When one group claims to have the exclusive truth, others are automatically seen as inferior or lost. It creates a saved versus damned mindset, which fuels arrogance, judgment, and hostility. But true spirituality isn't about creating categories of worthiness. It's about recognizing the divine in everyone. No real path to enlightenment encourages separation. It fosters unity. Yet organized religions have built walls between people, not bridges. The irony is heartbreaking. The very systems claiming to preach love and acceptance often teach separation and superiority. Imagine a world where spiritual truth was shared, not enforced, where beliefs were personal, not political. That world is possible, but only when we move beyond the man-made barriers that religion continues to build between us. One of the darkest aspects of organized religion is how it exploits people during their most vulnerable moments. When you're grieving, afraid, searching for purpose, or feeling lost, religious systems offer answers and sometimes comfort. But that comfort often comes with a cost: obedience, money, and submission. Vulnerability becomes a gateway to manipulation. People are promised healing and salvation, but only if they follow the rules, join the group, or reject their doubts. This is spiritual opportunism. It takes your pain and turns it into control. Religious leaders know when people are desperate, they'll accept almost any explanation to make sense of suffering. And rather than empowering individuals to find strength within, they point to external saviors and rituals. True spiritual support empowers. It doesn't exploit. It encourages you to explore, to question, and to heal on your terms. The divine doesn't need you to kneel in fear or give away your power. It asks you to rise. If a belief system only feels comforting when you're broken, but oppressive when you're whole, it's not divine. It's designed to keep you dependent. Your vulnerability is sacred. Don't let anyone use it against you. Rituals can be beautiful. They're symbolic acts that mark important moments in life. But in organized religion, many rituals become mechanical, empty routines performed out of fear or obligation. You go through the motions without understanding why. You say the words, kneel at the right time, recite the same prayers, but feel no connection. This disconnect is spiritual stagnation. Ritual without intention is just repetition. When we engage in ritual without meaning, we're not honoring the divine, we're numbing ourselves to it. In many traditions, the original rituals were meant to awaken consciousness, not suppress it. But over time, institutions standardized and commercialized them. What was once sacred became scripted.